Hello and welcome to The Royals, the podcast where we discuss what happens behind palace walls and why it matters. I'm Kate Mansey.
And I'm Roya Nikkhah. It was a royal reunion many thought might never happen. Prince Harry and Meghan quietly arrived at Highgrove with Archie and Lilibet for a strictly private meeting with King Charles and Queen Camilla.
Now, there were no photographs, no TV cameras, and virtually no details. So what do we know about what happened behind the gates at Highgrove?
And after a bruising week for Harry, losing his privacy case, what did the palace make of his attack on that judgment?
And after years of waging war on the palace, the press, and the British establishment, is Highgrove the moment Harry finally puts his sword down?
Well, to Highgrove, Kate.
To Highgrove.
We've been to Highgrove a few times.
We have.
For a slightly different event. That meeting came after weeks of debate, discussion, will they, won't they, will they, won't they. But it sort of felt like momentum was moving in the week because although Meghan had pulled out of public events with Harry last week, he was in town for a week, the fact that we were told she was coming with the children just set it up, didn't it?
It did. Well, we also thought he was going to stay in Buckingham Palace at one point. Transpired that wasn't the case. So it didn't start off well that week for Harry. But then we had this culmination, didn't we, on the Friday when Buckingham Palace, not Harry's spokesman, revealed that there had been a meeting that Harry, Meghan and Prince Archie, as they referred to him, and Princess Lilibet met Charles and Camilla at Highgrove. That was it. That was all that we were told, that the meeting had concluded, that it wasn't a stayover. They weren't staying overnight. They'd gone for the afternoon, been there at Highgrove House. We were told, that's your lot. We're not putting out any pictures. We're not putting out any further detail. And Harry's camp, for once, was stumm.
So far.
So far.
Long may that continue, both sides actually, because last week was a real week of brief and counter brief from both sides. And I think there was a lot of noise and a lot of drama.
Will they, won't they? Will they, won't they? Now, we didn't see Meghan sort of publicly in the UK at all. She had been due, hadn't she, to join Harry on that Wednesday and for some of the Invictus engagements. They flew in privately. They weren't seen. And then ushered into Highgrove away from the press.
But they were able to sneak in under the radar, which is interesting because one of the things you and I have talked about endlessly on this podcast is the security. Harry's issue with security, the fact he continues to fight to have his security reinstated here. It hasn't been successful. He hasn't had that reinstated. There is an ongoing, issue with Ravek. Will it review his security? Will it do this security review? He has always said repeatedly, many times, it's not safe for me to bring my wife and children back to the UK without that. That famous interview last year he gave after losing the battle of the Home Office, I can't see a world in which I can bring my wife and my children back and all the things they're going to miss. He has been able to do that. He has been able to do that pretty adequately without any drama. People close to him last week told me at the weekend, well, he did bring them back, but it wasn't in the way he wanted to. He would have liked them to have been involved in some of the public events, the children too, which I thought was interesting, but that wasn't possible without the extra security. Okay. But he was able to bring them back. They were able to see their grandfather. They were able to be here. And I thought one of the other really interesting things about last week, given where we started with the king saying, you're not staying at Buckingham Palace, was the fact that it was widely reported and he let it be known he was staying with his uncle, Charles Spencer, Diana's brother.
Yeah.
The other family.
Yes, where, of course, his late mother is buried. Now, Highgrove in and of itself is really interesting, isn't it? I mean, I think it's significant because that's where Harry and William used to play. We've both been around there. There's a new tree house. One wonders whether they were playing in the tree house. The children were showing the gardens. But it's also become, it's a real home to Charles. So to bring Harry into that kind of the bosom of the family in that way, I thought was significant.
It's a sanctuary for Charles, isn't it?
Yes.
And the drama came into the sanctuary, but in a quiet way.
Well, he's got his chapel there as well, hasn't he, in the gardens that we've seen.
Where he goes to reflect after turbulent times. Do you think he went and did a session there after waving them off? I'll just go and reflect.
I liked your piece at the weekend because there was a great line in it oh, to be a fly on the hydrangeas, somebody told you. And I think that sort of sums it up, because so much we don't know about it. Now, what was Harry's reaction? What were sources close to Harry saying after this? Because both sides stuck to the deal. You know, there was a lot of secrecy around it. No pictures were released. They didn't get the money shot of the family, the big family reunion, which they would have known would have been front page everywhere. But Harry did let it be known a little bit. Tell us what his reaction was to the reunion.
Well, I was told on Saturday, what was interesting, I thought, was his demeanour when he was at Birmingham on Friday. And he clearly knew this meeting was going to happen. He was going to go from the NEC to Warwickshire. He seemed, and people who saw him there were like, he was pretty buzzing. He always is with Invictus, but he really was.
Puppyish.
Yeah. On Saturday, when he went to Warwickshire, I spoke to someone in his team who said there was no leaking of what happened. There was no emotional response like we have had previously from Harry when he comes out to a meeting and says, I don't know how much longer my father's got. Blah, blah, blah. But I was told he was energised, buoyed, very happy. So he was clearly delighted that it took place, regardless of all the drama and all the fighting between him and his family and his father. I think there is something about Harry being able to reintroduce his children who've not seen their grandfather for 4 years.
That's it. The children haven't been here since 2022 for the Platinum Jubilee. Meghan was last here for the Queen's funeral later that year. Yeah. So 4 years have gone by. A lot has been said from Montecito about the King, about Camilla, about the rest of the family. It would not have been an easy meeting. How significant do you think it was that Meghan was there with the children?
I thought it was significant that she pulled out of the public engagements. I know security was cited as one issue, but
I'm not sure what had changed between them announcing that she was going to come and be part of those public engagements and then the no-show.
I wonder whether she sort of ponders the reaction to her in the UK now.
I'm sure.
Although I think going and doing things like the Invictus event, which she was supposed to do with Harry, she's always going to be positively received there. I thought, to be a fly on the hydrangea. Harry definitely wants a relationship with his father and his children. I've never got the sense really in the last few years that Meghan is particularly fussed about rebuilding a relationship with the UK or with the royal family.
We've not heard anything from her on that point, have we?
So I suspect she
hasn't been back.
No,
for 4
I
years.
suspect she was there more to support Harry and be with the kids in a new environment with their grandfather, the king. It must be quite odd for them. They're American children. The father is, the spare. Their grandfather is the King of England, who they haven't seen for 4 years.
And they're prince and princess.
Yeah.
Is it significant that the palace use those terms? Obviously they are, so they're entitled to use, those monikers. But it was interesting. It felt like an olive branch from the palace to say that Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet had been there.
I think the whole thing was a massive olive branch. You can't see it in any other way. I mean, a lot of people have been saying, is this the beginning of a big rapprochement reconciliation? I'm not sure it's the beginning of, a whole new relationship, but it's definitely the beginning of a slight crack in the ice, a thaw in the ice, and proof that it's possible. It's logistically possible too.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a good step forward, isn't it? But I think let's see, because who knows what will come out, whether details will seep out on one side or another, and then the whole thing will blow up again. But who was there this time as well that we haven't discussed? Camilla, because she wasn't at the Clarence House meeting between Harry and the King in September when he came over last year. She was there previously when, after the King's diagnosis, she was in the room. This time she was there. I mean, to have to face Meghan after everything that, Harry and Meghan have said. And let's remember, when Harry was promoting Spare, his memoirs, he called her dangerous. He said that his stepmother was a villain, if you remember.
I do. I remember it very well. And in his book, when he talked about what he saw as a campaign to rehabilitate her image and the public's mind from what she had been, the toxic mistress to the king, to anointed queen, he said that she had sacrificed him on her personal PR altar. So really quite pointed attacks at his father's wife.
One presumes they haven't been sort of WhatsApping, sorry about that, or there's been no apology about that. But then here they are at Highgrove. Now, it's where the King likes to stay. Camilla prefers to be at Ray Mill, of course, her traditional family home, not far away. But it does feel like, you talk about Meghan being there to support Harry. It feels like Camilla's very much there to support the king.
There's no way in the world she's going to let that meeting happen without her.
Well, no, because what if something's said and then afterwards...
I think it speaks to the Camilla and the kind of character she is, which is, as I wrote at the weekend, and she's not just a canny operator, but she's very loyal and protective of Charles. Regardless of the fact that he's having cancer treatment, she's very loyal and protective to him generally as a father, as someone who's got a not entirely straightforward son, like so many of our families. We know how hurt she was by those jibes that he made. The king let it be known that, he felt that in Spare a red line was crossed. Harry crossed a red line. I know her great friend Fiona Lansdowne told me that it did hurt her. The things that he said about her did hurt her. So, she's got reason to be pretty annoyed with Harry and Meghan. But there she was. I think probably, she's brilliant at making small talk. She can sort of rise above the awkwardness. She's done it all her life. But I suspect she wanted to be there not just to support the king, but to actually see and hear what happened and what was said. So that if down the line something comes out or emerges that possibly maybe a recollections may vary scenario, she was there to see it.
Fascinating to see. And of course, one person who we never talk about anymore when Harry comes over, because it's just such a moot point, is William. Because that, it feels very much that's done for now, at least. What would you think?
Well, it goes to the heart of the question of whether or not reconciliation is really possible if William's not part of it, doesn't it? William was in Windsor playing a charity polo match. Of course, the brothers used to play in those charity polo matches together. And now one plays in California, one plays at Windsor once a year. No sign of William at any Spencer family reunion a few days later either. Can reconciliation between Harry and the royal family really be meaningful without William? I don't think so.
I think with the institution, with monarchy, no, because ultimately William's the next boss. And how will that work, when William is king?
Yeah.
So I think it's nice that Harry can rebuild that relationship with his father. And I think that is quite crucial to both the king and Harry.
I suspect it'll put much more pressure on the king's relationship with William. Because William won't like the fact that Harry's, after all that's been said and done, Harry wafts back into Highgrove, their childhood home, and goes and has tea with the king.
But he can't surely begrudge the king wanting to meet his grandchildren.
But he won't like it.
No.
He won't like it.
And also, William's children will be curious about the family, and that will be interesting as William's children grow up and they have questions about Uncle Harry
and their cousins,
Auntie Meghan,
who they don't know,
and their cousins who they don't know at all. And the cousins eventually might be the kind of bridge when they both want to find out about each other when they're older.
It's so much to unpick. It's absolutely fascinating, isn't it? If we hear nothing more about it as we go through the next few weeks, I think that'll be a very positive sign.
Yeah.
If anything comes out about that meeting, even any more kind of emotional response to it, I think it'll be...
back to square one.
I think it'll be game over for any more meetings.
Yeah.
I just think that, that's the red line, isn't it, for the palace?
Yeah.
And the fact that the palace put out that statement and there was lots of sort of follow-up with Harry's team. What else can you tell us? And they were just like, refer to Buckingham Palace. That was a very clear line for Buckingham Palace saying, we're controlling this.
For now. Let's see if they keep their counsel. I think Harry will do quite well to do so. But away from the reunion, there was a busy program of public events. We saw Harry doing goat yoga and Invictus, which was rather overshadowed, wasn't it?
It was, as it always sort of is these days, unfortunately. Harry is a great supporter of the Invictus Games, and they are a brilliant thing. And there's a lot of public goodwill behind the movement for supporting injured servicemen and women. But last week, the way it played out was just a classic. The judgment that came through, he lost his judgment against Associated Newspapers. He made that blistering attack afterwards about the judgment, saying it was a whitewash and an obvious whitewash. And everything he then does tends to fall under the shadow of the drama, doesn't it?
Well, that was it, wasn't it? It was the criticism of the King's courts. And that was one of the crucial elements that meant that they weren't going to let Harry do a U-turn on his offer of staying at Buckingham Palace, because they didn't want a statement like that, an excoriating attack on the King's courts, to be delivered from under a sovereign's roof. The fact that he then went ahead and did that, the palace said, well, this is exactly what we thought would happen. But what was the reaction from the palace when it did come?
Quite extraordinary. As I wrote at the weekend, after that statement that Harry made, where he really attacked Mr. Justice Nicklin in quite bitter terms, a joint statement with him and Baroness Doreen Lawrence, who was one of the other claimants, where there was sort of shock and upset with the implications of that statement. Because as someone said to me, a Palisade, there were jaws on the floor with a statement attacking not just a High Court judge, but the entire judicial system that acts in the King's name. There is profound upset constitutionally about that attack. And that's the problem with Harry, isn't it?
Yeah, but because that's important. Well, he doesn't get it. I mean,
or if he does, he doesn't care.
But that is important constitutionally because he's dragging the king essentially into a constitutional mess because the king has to be completely separate from any legal action. With Harry, then, the son of the monarch, attacking the sovereign's courts and the judges and essentially striking at the heart of the justice system and the civil courts, it compromises Charles. So for Charles to then have proceeded with the meeting with Harry after that was really interesting.
It's what people close to the royal family always talk about, the institution and the family business versus the family. And the family business side of things and the constitutional side of things were very muddy and messy and murky last week. But the king was somehow able to put that to one side, let his courtiers stew about it. But I was told he was really not very happy about it either and worried about it. But then put that aside and just focus on the family bit at that Highgrove meeting. But this is the issue with Harry. He is the king's son, and so it's not just I've made my own way in America. I've got a free life. Everything he says is scrutinized in the context of being the king's son, and he does know that. He's grown up in that system. He knows when he makes a statement like that, it's going to have reverberations wider than just beyond the WhatsApp screen on which it's been drafted.
So looking ahead to the timetable, end of July, there'll be the costs hearing.
Another hearing on that.
And now there'll be a discussion about the costs.
Which is said to be, the bill on both sides said to be up to £50 million.
£50 million.
£50 million.
So Associated will be wanting the full whack to recoup the costs that they've spent over the last 4 years in legal fees, barristers' time, lawyers' time.
Headline in the Times last week that they will be going for the jugular when it comes to costs. They feel buoyed and emboldened by that complete and utter victory. They won every single one of the 97 claims.
Yeah.
And that they will go for Harry and the other claimants.
So the question is, how are they going to fund that, I suppose, as well? How are they going to foot the bill? Now, we know a lot of the money came from the late Max Mosley and the Hacked Off campaign, which was a campaign against the press. How much is in that pot? We don't know. But, whether Prince Harry and Sir Elton John will in part have to contribute to those costs. We understand that Baroness Lawrence won't personally be liable to pay any of that through the deal that was struck with the sort of 7 claimants.
He can also appeal that judgment. I mean, I was told that he'd put that to one side while he was in the UK and actually till the end of the month. He's got time to think about whether or not he wants to appeal. You would hope, I think a lot of people around him would hope, he will take that loss on the chin. He hasn't taken it on the chin yet with that statement he made, but he will just draw a line and stop litigating. And he took the security battle all the way through to the Court of Appeal.
He did. So and he's still bruised from having to pay out for that.
And he still lost that. So I think, a lot of people who have Harry's best interests at heart, I know hope, he won't appeal that judgment. It won't continue, and this battle will finally come to an end after that cost hearing.
But we've also learned last week, didn't we, in the aftermath of the case against Associated, a little bit more detail about what had been going on behind the scenes with Harry's aides and sourcing and briefing and counter briefing. Because Charlotte Griffiths, who's one of the Mail on Sunday journalists who gave evidence in court, as was vindicated in the court judgment, later wrote a piece and said that she had been briefed by sources close to Harry's aides, that his comms team, 2 of his PR people, were going to meet with Tobin Andre, the King's Director of Communications. And that led her to be able to get a picture of that meeting, which then went on the front page of the Mail on Sunday. Now, why is this significant? Well, that was front page news, wasn't it, at the time? And after that came out, Sources close to Harry were reported in the Telegraph saying they were frustrated that details of the meeting and a picture of the meeting have been made public, which at the time pointed the finger back at the palace that maybe the palace were leaking details about the meeting. But in actual fact, it transpires that the original tip-off, according to Charlotte Griffiths, allegedly came from Harry's aides. Now, we've been to Harry at the Times and for comment on this, and they've declined to comment. It just adds to this sort of murky world, what you say in public and what they're doing behind the scenes and how they're pulling the levers all the time. And I just thought that was fascinating because it's such big news at the time. And the palace at the time sort of hands up, aghast, saying, in what world would we, leak details of a meeting between press teams? It serves no purpose. But then I don't know quite what Harry's team hoped to get out of that meeting either.
I think they thought that it would project an image of a rapprochement between Harry and his father. If the representatives were meeting, it had the opposite effect, didn't it? That being leaked, because, it just sparked, as the phrase that's used to me, existential mistrust from the palace towards Harry and his team. So that meeting at Highgrove, though, could prove to be more significant beyond just what happened last week, because we know Harry is coming back in a couple of months. He will be back in the UK in September, supporting Whale Child, the charity that he's done stuff for so long. He's back every year. He will probably, knowing Harry in the way that he does when he comes back, do a few engagements around that Whale Child thing. He'll be back for a few days. Will he see his father again? He will certainly want to see his father again. We don't know whether Meghan and the kids will come back with him. It will probably depend on their school arrangements. But, it may be that he comes back every few months. We know, people have said for a long time he wants to come back. He'd like to come back much more. He said that.
No, he has to prove himself now. I think the ball's in Harry's court. He has to show that he can be trusted to have meetings in private that stay private.
The question mark will be, do people think just because he sees his father and spends some more time here, there's always that question mark, does he want to return to a royal role? I still don't get the sense that he does.
He likes his pseudo-royal role. He likes to turn up with his operational notes and go on pseudo foreign visits. He wants to do it on his own terms. I don't get the sense that he wants back in. That will never happen because Charles would need approval from William even and the Queen, which is why would they do that? The public wouldn't stand for it either, I don't think. But your point about Meghan perhaps being worried about the public reaction is really interesting, because when will we see Meghan in the UK again?
Publicly.
We've got Invictus being held in Birmingham in 2027. She will want surely to be part of that, to be on the stage with that, to be by Harry's side for that. It feels like there might need to be a little bit of a testing of the waters before she returns for that, because the longer you leave these things, the harder it gets. Having said that, she's met the King and Queen with the children. It seems like a good first step.
So we asked listeners last week what they made of Harry's relationship with his father and with the rest of the family. And one listener who wrote into us, thank you, who asked not to be named, said this: until the family resolves its tensions, every visit will generate the same media circus. At the heart of this is a family and grandchildren. Let's hope they can collectively forgive and reconcile. And that includes the future king, of course, William.
I think, yes, in part, but I don't know if the family tensions are what's generating the media circus. I think Harry and his team and his gripes about security, that is very much, because it's been proven, hasn't it, that the family can meet in private.
They can come to the UK without mishap.
Yeah.
They can do it safely.
And so if that's genuinely what they want, that can happen. Hopefully it's, Harry deciding that it's time to let bygones be bygones and move forward. But we haven't really seen any sign of that.
Do you think, and it's the question I posed in the piece at the weekend, can Harry be a peacetime prince? Does he know how to stop fighting? I mean, he's been in fight mode for so many years now. Pretty much, for the couple of years before we left the royal family, and then the 6 years since, it really has been fight mode. Do you think he knows how to be slightly more peaceful going forward?
Well, the idea of him as a kind of a warrior prince sounds daring and like he's on the side of virtue, but so often his causes aren't backed up by kind of public support or any real sense that anybody's with him on his kind of one-man crusade, as this disastrous judgment for him proved, that he was out for baying for blood, but totally barking up the wrong tree when it came to Associated Newspapers Group. So I think it's so hard to think 6 years on that he's still so angry. I think a lot of people who knew and loved him would want him to be happy and want him to be settled. But he doesn't show any sign of that kind of growth at all, does he?
Well, fingers crossed, watch this space. The Highgrove Summit, Sandringham Summit, see what we've done there, this is the Highgrove Summit, hopefully might turn a corner for him.
Maybe the magic of the Highgrove Gardens and the kind of the
hydrangeas.
The peacefulness of the hydrangeas. Yeah, will have some sort of lasting effect. Let's hope so. Well, that's it from us this week. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, rate and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube at the Times Royals channel.
And next time, what happens when the King meets the King of the North? That's the question next week when incoming Prime Minister Andy Burnham will formally ask King Charles to form his government.
And we'll be taking a deep dive into the relationship between politics and the palace, what happens behind closed doors, and where the monarch's powers begin and end.
And what would you like to know about the relationship between the King and his Prime Ministers? Email us your thoughts and questions at theroyals@thetimes.co.uk. We might include them in next week's episode.
And until then, thanks for joining us on The Royals. We'll see you next week.